The Last of Us Part 2 continues the story of Ellie, a survivor of an apocalypse brought on by a fungal infection that turns humans into violent, zombie-like creatures. The game features stunning visuals, intense third-person combat, puzzle solving, and a deeply emotional narrative exploring themes of revenge, morality, and consequences. The game has elements of survival horror, with limited supplies and ammo, compelling players to be tactical with resources and encouraging a stealth gameplay style. As a UI UX designer, where the game truly shines is in the comprehensive menus that are incredibly easy and intuitive to use. The highlight of this achievement are the accessibility settings, which continue to set Sony games apart as leaders in providing players with hearing, visual, and gameplay aids. Even small interactions, like remembering the last visited setting, acknowledges those who revisit and tinker with the same settings often. It is a unique attention to detail found nowhere else that I'm aware of. The focus of this video, however, will be on the in-game crafting and upgrade screens. This type of menu doesn't pause the game, purposefully leaving the player vulnerable to attack. This leads to cool, intense moments like crafting health kits in the middle of battle, on the brink of death, and healing last minute. So it's important for these screens to be quick to access, navigate, and close. And it's in this regard where the issues start to appear. The crafting screen is laid out with the UI panel to the right and Ellie approximately in the center, with lots of empty space to the left. This layout calls for a compact UI, which while functional, compromises the user experience. The hierarchy of information is inconsistent, with the text description at the top, recipe details in the middle, and the item navigation in the bottom. This forces the player to start reading the menu at the bottom to make a selection, then switching to the top to read the item details, and lastly landing on the middle portion to read the requirements. This flow clashes with the muscle memory of most players who are accustomed to navigating websites every day, which commonly feature the navigation at the top of the screen. The compact nature of the UI also limits what can be shown, requiring the player to navigate to an item simply to see if the resources are available for crafting or to see the maximum carry capacity. On their own, these limitations don't pose a problem, but combined, they can create inconvenience and discourage the player from using the menu, which is essential to play the game. All of these issues could be mitigated by a more spacious layout for the UI panel, and it's not clear why the limitation exists in the first place. At first, it seemed like it was done to ensure a smooth transition from Ellie's standing position to kneeling down and opening the backpack. But here's a simulation of a transition that creates more space, and overall, it feels natural, leaving lots of room for our UI improvements, so there's potential for improvement without cost. Now let's discuss the issues found in the second menu we'll be fixing, which is the weapons upgrade screen. The phases of this interaction start with selecting the weapon to upgrade, followed by an animation of the weapon being prepped for changes, then a selection of the desired upgrade, and finally, the assembly of the upgrade. Like the crafting screen, the information hierarchy also features the navigation in the bottom, but in addition to problems with the order, this screen also suffers from directional hierarchy. Navigation bars are a type of list, and there are two ways to make a list, horizontally or vertically. But when accompanied by other lists, such as the contents of an upgrade, the direction of the information starts to matter. At first glance, it might appear to some players like the top row is the first layer of navigation, while the bottom is the second row, when in reality, it's actually the opposite. Now with these issues covered, let's start creating the solution. I start by using Photoshop's generative fill and content-aware fill to remove the existing UI. Next, I move the image to the left and use generative fill again to complete the image. The first few images didn't turn out great, so it may take a few attempts to find the right fit. Then I bring the image into Premiere and position the captured footage of the crafting animation on top, aligning and merging them with a feathered mask. While the right side of the screen is static, this won't be too much of a concern as it'll be covered up with the new UI, and there isn't much movement in the background anyway. I move over to After Effects and start recreating the design system of the UI. It's important to emphasize that this isn't a total redesign of the interface, but an adjustment to the layout of information. Plus, it is much easier to see the difference and the benefits of the change if the overall look remains the same. I set the base for the panel in place and begin prototyping the components which will contain many of the menu icons. I often animate some components early on to help validate the potential of a project. Seeing pieces of the UI realistically simulated at this stage lets me know that I'm on the right track. Confident with the animations, I duplicate the components and start filling in the remainder of the UI. At this stage, I'm still experimenting with the layout, thinking of the ways I can use the additional space to the right. I do know, however, that I want the navigation to come first, followed by the list of ingredients. Once those are in place, I realize the role of the right-hand side as the place where the ingredients are combined. I add a placeholder image representing the craft item and the description below. I test ways to fill the remainder of the space under the description item, eventually settling on listing the crafting ingredients represented by their icons. While all items in this game require one of each ingredient to craft, having those numbers available removes any ambiguity for players who are used to seeing them there. Once that is settled, I spot an opportunity to convert the entire description panel into a button, now making it the main point of interaction for the player. For a time, I was stuck on how to visually represent the in-game craft items. Then, as I was capturing some game footage, I realized that most of the items are represented in these cool black and white renders that show up on loading screens. While not perfect, they're a great way to prototype what dedicated renders would look like for each item. Next, I recreate the skills menu utilizing the same idea as the crafting screen. There's enough room to display all upgrade items simultaneously, more closely resembling a typical video game skill tree. Next, I add one of my favorite features, a video preview of what the upgrades look like. Other Sony titles like the Horizon and God of War series include these previews, and they make choosing upgrades a lot easier. I use the remaining space for the description and the cost of the upgrade, and the skills panel is finished. The crafting and skills menus now have a layout that closely resembles what players are mostly accustomed to. The information now flows in the order of interaction. All items show the current versus maximum carry capacity, and there's plenty of space for all available resources to be visible. The information card now has pleasing visuals to accompany the descriptions and a dedicated space for the required ingredients. The skills categories now appear next to each other, enabling players to see all progress at a glance without needing to navigate back and forth. The information card features previews of all skills, removing any doubt about the expectation of what the skill does. Next, let's discuss the process for recreating the weapon upgrades panel. The biggest challenge for recreating the prototype is that the existing UI appears on top of a moving background, so it can't easily be removed. But I managed to find a workaround. The last bit of the animation has no UI on top of it. If I play that part in reverse, I can make it look like Ellie is setting up her weapon for upgrade. Adding a pause for UI animation and playing it forwards again gets me an approximate replication of the original animation. But while it's easy to reverse the video, I can't simply do the same for the audio. Instead, I need to break up, reorder, and combine different parts together to match the movements of the reverse clip. With the base animation edited, I can start on the UI changes. I repurpose the assets from the crafting screen, making adjustments to the width and text spacing. I convert the horizontal list of the upgrade contents into a vertical one, and like the skill tree, I display all the items for the player to see at a glance. I use simple check marks for upgrades already obtained and exclamation marks for newly available ones. Then I move on to the individual panel where upgrades are selected. Here, the goal is to again arrange the upgrade list vertically to match the previous panels, and also to match the expectation that players are commonly used to. With the animations complete, here's the final result. Echoing the skill tree, a pattern emerges in how the information is displayed. But it's also important to note that patterns should only be repeated if they work. Designs that break patterns are necessary to discover new ways to navigate UI. Ultimately, having a variety of options to test creates the best condition for discovering the right solution. The goal of this video was to demonstrate that issues relating to UX don't always call for an overhaul of the UI, but to make adjustments to the layout or interactions. Having spent almost 100 hours in this game, I still found myself having to fight with the muscle memory I built playing other games over the years. These changes offer a familiar layout that works well, and it's all thanks to a simple adjustment in how much space is allocated to the UI panel. I hope you learned something new, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.